Hannah Cole's Sunday morning run was supposed to be routine, a short jog through familiar streets. But by the time the church bells finished ringing, she was gone, leaving behind only a single earbud and a trail that ended in silence. Ethan Ward thought he could hide the truth deep in the woods, but secrets buried in Maple Ridge never stay quiet for long. Detective Sarah Turner didn't believe in coincidences, and as she traced Hannah's last steps, she uncovered a pattern too precise, too cruel to be random. Lover Ward, the ghost everyone thought was dead, was still out there watching, waiting, and reliving the Sunday mornings that never ended. The morning air in Maple Ridge carried a soft chill as the sun crept over the horizon, painting the town in gold and pale blue. It was one of those peaceful Sundays when everything seemed slow and safe, the kind of morning where neighbors waved lazily from their porches, and church bells echoed faintly through the valley. 19-year-old Hannah Cole laced up her running shoes, tied her blonde hair into a loose ponytail, and stepped out onto the quiet street. She was home from college for the weekend, catching up with family and trying to enjoy the calm of her hometown before the rush of the semester pulled her back. Jogging was her way to clear her head, a routine she never skipped, especially on Sunday mornings. Her route was simple, the same one she'd taken since high school. Down Cedar Lane, across the park, then through the trail that curved behind the old bridge. She waved at Mrs. Langley, the elderly neighbor tending to her garden, who would later tell police that she saw Hannah jogging past at around 7:30 a.m. She looked normal, focused, maybe even happy. Nothing about her seemed out of place. But that was the last time anyone saw her alive, or so it seemed at first. When the clock struck 9, Hannah's mother began to worry. Her daughter was never late. She called her phone, but it rang twice before going straight to voicemail. Her father drove along the jogging route, expecting to see her by the bridge or the park, but the roads were empty. It was unusual for Maple Ridge to feel so hollow, like the entire town had paused, waiting for something to happen. By noon, fear had set in. Police were called, and within hours, the town that had always prided itself on safety became a search ground. Volunteers, officers, and neighbors scoured the streets, shouting Hannah's name into the woods. Dogs picked up her scent near the old bridge that crossed Miller Creek, but the trail went cold halfway across. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Her water bottle was found beside the guardrail, still upright, and one of her earbuds lay on the pavement a few feet away. Nothing looked scattered or rushed, only deliberate, as though someone had placed them there to be found. By nightfall, the streetlights flickered on across Maple Ridge, casting long, uneasy shadows. Police cars lined the streets, their lights cutting through the fog that had rolled in from the river. The Cole family's house, once warm and filled with chatter, now sat in silence. Reporters began gathering by the sidewalk, their cameras catching glimpses of the worried parents through the window. Rumors spread quickly. Some said a wild animal had attacked her near the forest. Others whispered that she might have run away or been taken by someone passing through town. But those who knew Hannah dismissed the talk. She had plans, dreams, and no reason to disappear. Still, as the first night ended and another dawn approached, there was one truth everyone felt deep down. Something dark had crossed the peaceful boundary of Maple Ridge, and the town would never be the same again. The following morning, Maple Ridge felt different. The same streets that once carried laughter and the sound of church bells were now lined with police cars and volunteers holding flashlights. The park where children usually played was sealed off with yellow tape. Detectives marked the ground near the bridge, photographing every footprint and tire track. It was no longer a place of calm, it was a crime scene. The entire town held its breath, waiting for news that never came. Detective Sarah Turner, a seasoned investigator with a calm but sharp demeanor, was brought in from the county office. She reviewed Hannah Cole's case file, tracing her last known steps with a practiced eye. Everything seemed routine: a morning jog, a quiet street, no witnesses after 7:30 a.m., but one detail unsettled her. 3 other young women had vanished in nearby towns over the past year, each disappearance happening on a Sunday morning, all within the same 2-hour window. None of the women were ever found. It wasn't enough to draw a conclusion, but it was too much to ignore. By noon, investigators collected every camera recording they could find: traffic lights, parking lots, and doorbell footage. Hours of video revealed little until a grainy frame caught everyone's attention. A white pickup truck was seen passing the park entrance twice between 7:25 and 7:45 a.m., right around the time Hannah disappeared. The driver's face was hidden behind large sunglasses, and the license plate was only partly visible. It was a lead, but a weak one. Still, in a case with so little to hold on to, even a partial clue felt like a thread worth pulling. Hannah's parents pleaded with the public for information, their faces pale and tired under the camera lights. Flyers appeared on every store window and lamppost. The once busy downtown fell quiet. People avoided the jogging trails. Parents drove their children to school instead of letting them walk. Even the church pews sat half empty that following Sunday, as though the entire town had begun to fear its own silence. Detectives started connecting the missing women's cases, building a map of dates, times, and locations. Each woman had been seen alone near a wooded area or park. Each one vanished without signs of struggle, and always on a Sunday. It began to feel like someone was planning these disappearances carefully, studying routines, waiting for moments when no one was watching. Turner's instincts told her this wasn't random. It was a pattern hidden in plain sight. When the search team returned from the creek area, they brought with them Hannah's smartwatch, found a few yards off the main trail. The screen was cracked, and the time frozen at 8:12 a.m. Her last recorded heart rate spiked sharply before cutting off completely. That detail haunted the detectives. Something had startled her enough to trigger panic before everything went blank. As the second day drew to a close, Detective Turner stood on the bridge where Hannah's trail ended. The water below moved slowly, reflecting the last light of the day. Somewhere out there, she thought, was a predator who had made Maple Ridge his hunting ground. The town had lost its sense of safety overnight, and as the darkness crept over the trees, it felt like the beginning of something much worse. By midweek, Maple Ridge was drowning in tension. Search teams had expanded their efforts beyond town limits, combing through thick woods and abandoned lots. Every field, creek, and roadside was checked twice, but Hannah Cole remained missing. Her friends from college arrived to help, setting up a small tent near the park to coordinate volunteers. Each day ended the same, with nothing but exhaustion and more questions. But the investigation was beginning to take shape piece by piece, and one name started to surface more than once. Ethan Ward. Ethan was a 35-year-old repair worker who lived alone near the edge of the forest. He was known to take on small jobs around town, fixing fences, clearing yards, patching roofs. Nothing about him stood out, but a partial license plate from the gas station camera matched his white pickup truck. When questioned, he claimed he had spent that morning repairing his truck at home. His alibi seemed shaky but not impossible. Still, Detective Turner couldn't shake the unease she felt when she visited his property. His house sat at the end of a narrow dirt road, surrounded by tall pines and silence. His yard was clean, almost too clean, and the garage smelled faintly of oil and metal. The team obtained a warrant and searched the premises. Inside the garage, beneath a stack of old toolboxes, they discovered a small metal box containing several pieces of women's jewelry, earrings, bracelets, and a silver necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. Hannah's mother identified the pendant immediately. It had been a gift for her 17th birthday. The discovery sent a wave of shock through the investigation. But it wasn't enough to charge Ethan. There were no fingerprints. No direct evidence tying him to the abductions. Meanwhile, a new clue emerged when a hiker exploring the northern woods stumbled upon a single running shoe. Caked in mud but still recognizable as Hannah's. It was found near an abandoned cabin that locals said hadn't been used in years. The place was tucked so deep in the forest that few even remembered it existed. When officers arrived, the door was unlocked, but the air inside felt heavy, stale, and wrong. Dust coated every surface, but the footprints on the floor were fresh. A trail camera mounted on a nearby tree offered another grim detail. It captured a blurred image of someone entering the cabin at dawn, carrying what looked like a duffel bag. The face was impossible to make out, but the figure's build appeared similar to Ethan's. When investigators entered, they found a folded piece of paper on the table, the only object not covered in dust. Written in dark ink were 3 chilling words: "You're too late." The cabin became the center of the investigation, with forensic teams working through the night. Every clue pointed closer to Ethan Ward, but nothing was solid enough to hold him. Detective Turner knew that the trail was growing colder by the hour. Somewhere between the silence of those woods and the emptiness of that cabin, Hannah's story was still unfolding, and the truth was far from over. Days passed, and the search for Hannah Cole began to stretch beyond. Maple Ridge, the town that once felt close and safe, had turned into a landscape of suspicion, where every unfamiliar face drew uneasy glances and every rumor felt like a possible lead. The cabin deep in the forest had become the focal point of the investigation. Forensic teams moved carefully through the property, collecting soil samples, fingerprints, and anything that could tell the story of what had happened there. What they found was both revealing and haunting. Behind the cabin, near a patch of disturbed earth, officers uncovered a shallow grave. Inside were human remains. The entire site fell silent. For a few seconds, even the wind seemed to stop. The body was not Hannah's. Dental records later identified the remains as belonging to one of the other missing women from the region. The discovery changed everything. It confirmed that Maple Ridge was dealing with a serial offender, someone organized, patient, and experienced enough to hide in plain sight. It also reignited hope that Hannah might still be alive. If one body was buried, why wasn't hers? Detectives began to believe she could still be held somewhere. That thought became their driving force. Investigators retraced Ethan Ward's movements, expanding the search to every property he had worked on and every back road he was known to travel. Then, 3 days after the discovery, a highway camera spotted his white pickup truck heading north toward a remote mountain area 40 miles away. It was a stretch of land filled with abandoned hunting lodges and forgotten trails, places where someone could vanish without a trace. Police followed the lead and found the truck parked near a derelict lodge at the edge of a clearing. The vehicle was empty, its engine cold, and the driver gone. Inside the lodge, the air smelled of damp wood and rust. The floorboards creaked under each step as the officers moved deeper into the building. Dust hung in the air, and faint marks on the floor showed where something heavy had been dragged. Down a narrow hallway, they found a locked basement door. Fresh scratches lined the handle, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. When they forced it open, the smell of decay filled the room. Chains were bolted to the wall. A torn blanket lay in one corner, along with empty water bottles and a small mirror cracked down the center. Lying on the floor beside it was a broken wristwatch, its screen frozen at 8:12 m.e. the exact time. Hannah's smartwatch had stopped recording during her run. Detective Turner felt the weight of that discovery sink into her chest. The signs of captivity were undeniable. Whoever had been there had suffered, but there was still no body, no proof of death, only evidence that someone, maybe Hannah, had fought to survive. Outside, the night was eerily quiet. The forest around the lodge whispered with wind, but no birds sang. It was as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to surface. The deeper the team searched, the clearer it became that they were dealing with something more complex than a simple abduction. Someone was orchestrating every detail, staying one step ahead. And Hannah's disappearance was only one part of a much larger story still unfolding in the shadows. 2 weeks after the discovery at the lodge, the search for Ethan Ward intensified. His name and face appeared on every local news broadcast. His pickup truck shone in endless loops as police appealed for information. He had simply vanished, leaving behind the same kind of silence that had followed Hannah Cole's disappearance. Rumors grew wild. Some said he'd fled the state, others that he'd taken his own life in the woods. But Detective Turner refused to believe the case was over. There were too many unanswered questions, too many threads that didn't fit together. Ethan's note found in the cabin, "You're too late," felt less like a confession and more like a warning. Then, one morning, a rest stop attendant in a neighboring state called authorities. A white pickup truck matching Ethan's description had been parked there for 2 days. When officers arrived, the vehicle was unlocked. Inside, they found his wallet, identification, and a handwritten note. The message, shaky but deliberate, read, "She's free now. None of us are." It was signed with his initials. That same evening, a woman walked into a small-town diner 70 miles away. She was barefoot, bruised, and covered in dirt. When the waitress asked her name, she whispered, "Hannah." Hannah was rushed to a nearby hospital, her condition fragile but stable. For days she barely spoke. Her eyes darted around the room as if she expected someone to appear from the shadows. Gradually, pieces of her memory began to surface, fragments that painted a picture more disturbing than anyone expected. She remembered being forced into a vehicle near the bridge. She remembered the sound of tires on gravel and a voice telling her not to scream. But most haunting of all, she remembered another voice, a woman's voice, soothing, calm, and strangely familiar, whispering that everything would be okay. When police reviewed evidence from the cabin again, They focused on the fingerprints found on the note left behind. They didn't match Ethan Ward or any of the victims. The results stunned investigators. The prints belonged to Laura Ward, Ethan's older sister, who had been declared missing 5 years earlier. She was believed to have died in a car accident, though her body had never been recovered. The revelation shifted the entire case. Ethan hadn't been the lone predator the town imagined. He had been protecting someone. Detective Turner pieced it together slowly. Laura Ward had suffered a mental breakdown after surviving an assault years before her disappearance. Somewhere along the line, she had turned her trauma into obsession, reliving it through her victims. Ethan, torn between loyalty and horror, had hidden her, feeding her delusion while trying to control the damage. But when Hannah was taken, something changed. Perhaps guilt consumed him, or perhaps he realized his sister could no longer be saved. His final note suggested he had freed Hannah before vanishing to cover Laura's escape or end it himself. Neither sibling was ever found. The woods north of Maple Ridge were searched for months, but no trace emerged. Hannah returned home, but she was never the same. She often woke in the middle of the night, certain she heard footsteps outside her window. Every Sunday morning, she refused to go outside. The town, once bright and peaceful, now carried a quiet fear that never fully lifted. Some believed Ethan and Laura were still out there, hidden among the endless trees. Others believed they had both vanished into the darkness they created. But one thing was certain: Maple Ridge would never again wake to a Sunday morning without remembering the day Hannah Cole disappeared and came back from a nightmare that still lingered in the shadows.